I didn't notice the clocks first. I noticed the refrigerator. That low hum you stop hearing after a while. The one that lives underneath every quiet night in every small house it cut off at 11:47 p.m. And the silence it left behind had shape to it. Wait. I was standing at the kitchen sink in a t-shirt and sweatpants, rinsing a glass I didn't need to rinse, and the sudden absence pressed against my ears like water. I turned around slowly. The microwave display was dark. The stove clock was dark. The little brass carriage clock my mother left me. The one on the shelf above the coffee maker, its second hand had frozen mid-tick, tilted forward like it had been reaching for something. Wren. My sister's voice from the living room, flat, not yet afraid. Wren, my phone's dead. Mine too, probably, I said, but I checked. Full battery. Screen frozen on the lock image, a photo of our dog, Biscuit, 3 years gone. The time in the corner read 11:47. It didn't move. Mara came into the kitchen holding her laptop like it had insulted her. She was 26, 4 years younger than me, and she'd moved back in 6 months ago after her lease ended and her savings didn't. She wore the same oversized hoodie she always wore in the evenings, the sleeves pulled down over her thumbs. "Power's out," she said. "No, listen." She listened. Then she frowned. Then she walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside, and I watched her shoulders go still in a way I didn't like. "Wren, the streetlights are on." I came up behind her. She was right. The whole block was lit porch lamps, the neighbor's Christmas string he never took down, the sodium glow at the corner of Ellis and Maple. Everything electric was working. Everything that measured was not. "Car clock?" I said. She was already grabbing keys. I followed her out barefoot onto the driveway, and the summer air felt wrong. Not colder, not warmer, just wrong. The way a room feels when someone's been in it who shouldn't have been. Mara popped the driver's door of her Corolla and turned the key one notch. The dash lit up. The radio hissed static. The clock said 11:47. Across the street, Mr. Halverson's porch light flicked on. He shuffled out in a bathrobe, holding his wristwatch up to his ear like a child listening for the ocean in a shell. "You too," he called. "Us too," I called back. Down the block, another porch light. Another. One by one, like dominoes falling in slow motion, the town of Ashfield woke up to the fact that time had stopped and nothing else had. Mara looked at me. She has our father's eyes pale, deep-set, quick to narrow. She was narrowing them now. "This is a solar flare thing, right?" she said. "EMP something. EMPs kill electronics. The car is running." "Then what?" I didn't answer, because I was looking past her, down the length of Maple Street toward the edge of town where the pines start. And I thought, for just a second, no longer, that I saw something move at the tree line. Not a person walking, a person leaning. The way a scarecrow leans when the post rots. Then it was gone, or it had never been there. And Mr. Halverson was calling something else across the street. And Mara was tugging my elbow. And I told myself I'd imagined it, because that was still. At 11:49 p.m. by a clock that no longer worked. The easiest thing to believe. We went back inside. We didn't sleep. Mara made coffee on the gas burner, and we sat at the kitchen table and waited for the world to explain itself. It didn't. Not for 6 hours. And when it finally did, it wasn't an explanation. It was a scream. I want to tell you what those 6 hours felt like, because I think they were the last hours I was ever fully a person. We tried the landline. My mother had kept it after she died, and I'd never disconnected it, some superstition. some inability to sever the last thing with her handwriting on the bill. It had a dial tone. Mara called our aunt in Bellingham. The phone rang. No one picked up. She called our cousin in Portland. Rang. No one picked up. She called 911, which is the thing you're supposed to do. And it rang 32 times before she set the receiver down, very carefully in its cradle like it was a bird that had just died in her hand. "They're not answering," she said. "They're overwhelmed." Ren. It rang 32 times. Nobody's overwhelmed for 32 rings. Nobody's there. I made her drink water. I made myself drink water. That's a thing I've noticed about fear. Before it becomes fear, it becomes thirst. Your body knows before your brain does. Around 1 in the morning, by my best guess, my wristwatch was as dead as everything else. So I was counting by the depth of the coffee in the pot. A car went by on Maple. Slow, headlights sweeping the front curtain. Then another, then no more. Whoever was leaving had already left. Mara was on the couch with her knees pulled to her chest. She'd stopped talking around the second cup. That wasn't like her. Mara talks when she's afraid. It's her whole coping mechanism, a constant narration, a running audit of the room. When she goes quiet, something in her has decided that words aren't enough anymore. "Say something," I told her. "I don't know what to say." "Say the stupidest thing you can think of." She almost smiled. "I think Biscuit would have barked by now." She was right. Biscuit had been dead 3 years, and I still knew exactly how he would have barked at whatever this was. 2 sharp warnings, and then a long, low growl at the front door. It was one of the things I missed most about him, the way he heard the world before I did. I checked the front door. Locked, chain on. I checked the back door. Locked. I checked the basement door, which we never used, and it was locked too. And I felt ridiculous checking it, and I checked it anyway. Around what must have been 3 in the morning, I heard the first siren, very far off. Not a police siren, the long, mournful kind, the civil defense kind, the kind small towns still have on poles at their fire stations and test on the first Wednesday of every month. Ashfield's was the first Wednesday. This was a Thursday. I was sure of that at least. Thursday, July whatever. The last date my calendar would ever hold. The siren wound up, held, wound down. Silence. Then it started again. "Ren." Mara was at the window. "Look." I looked. Down at the corner of Ellis and Maple, under the sodium lamp, a man was standing very still in the middle of the road. He was facing our house. He wasn't moving. He wasn't a neighbor I recognized. He was wearing what looked like a hospital gown or a long shirt, and his arms were hanging at odd angles as if he wasn't sure they belonged to him. We watched him for what felt like a long time. He didn't move. He didn't move. He didn't move. And then, all at once and without any transition, he turned his head 90 degrees and looked directly at our window. And the movement was so fast that I actually stepped backward and knocked into the coffee table. "Get away from the glass," I said. Mara got away from the glass. When I looked again, he was gone. And then, from somewhere over toward Ellis Street, someone screamed, not a word, not a call, just a sound. And it was 5:47 a.m., 6 hours exactly since the clock stopped, and Ashfield had officially begun. The scream was a woman's. That was the first thing my brain registered, in the useless way brains register things when they don't know what to do. A woman, adult, not a child. That mattered somehow, in the moment, and then it didn't matter at all. Mara was already at the front hall closet pulling on her sneakers. I stopped her with a hand on her shoulder gently, not roughly, and she jerked back like I'd burned her. "Someone's hurt," she said. "We don't know what's out there." "Someone's hurt, Ren. And we don't know what's out there." She stared at me. In the pale kitchen light, her face looked like our mother's. And I hated that. And I loved her for it. And I held her shoulder until she stopped trying to leave. She wasn't a coward. Neither of us was. But one of the things I would learn in the next hour was that courage isn't the opposite of caution. They live in the same house. They just fight over the thermostat. The scream came again, farther away, or the same distance, but weaker. And underneath it, something else, a sound I didn't have a word for. A wet, clipped, repeating sound, like someone snapping wet laundry against a table over and over. Mara covered her mouth. "Basement," I said. "What?" "Basement. Now. Both of us. Get down there and don't turn on a light." "Ren, we don't even use the..." "Now, Mara." I have never spoken to my sister like that. Not once in 26 years. She looked at me for one long second, and then she went. And I followed her. And I locked the basement door from the inside. A stupid, hollow-core interior door. But the only door in the house that didn't have a window in it or beside it. The basement smelled like dust and old cardboard and the faint mineral cold of a concrete floor. There was one small window, high on the wall, level with the ground outside. I'd screwed a piece of plywood over it 2 winters ago when a storm broke the glass. It was still there. I'd never gotten around to replacing the pane. We sat on the bottom step. Mara pulled her hoodie sleeves over her hands. I pulled the pull cord of the ceiling bulb, and then thought better of it and didn't. The dark settled around us like water. Above us, upstairs, the front porch creaked. I felt Mara go rigid beside me. I put one finger to my lips, even though she couldn't see it. The porch creaked again. Then the doorbell, our doorbell, the one that ran on the house current, did not ring. Because whoever was up there wasn't ringing. They were leaning. I could hear the wood of the door take the weight and then release it. Take it, release it, rhythmic, almost patient. I don't know how long that went on. Long enough that my legs cramped. Long enough that Mara stopped breathing twice, and I had to nudge her before she remembered how. Long enough that I began to believe, in some quiet part of me, that this was going to be my whole life, now sitting on a basement step in the dark, listening to something lean against my front door. Then the leaning stopped. Then footsteps, uneven and dragging, went off the porch and down the walk and away. Mara exhaled. It came out of her like a sob, but it wasn't crying. "Ren," she whispered. "What was?" "I don't know." "You saw something. At the window. Earlier." "I don't know what I saw. Don't lie to me right now. Please. Please don't lie to me right now." I didn't lie to her. I told her about the shape of the tree line, the way it had leaned, the wrongness of it. I told her about the man on the corner who had turned his head like a doll turning. I told her I'd seen enough movies to know the shape of what I was afraid of, and enough real life to know that reality didn't usually oblige. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "We have to get to Aunt Julia's." "Bellingham is 300 miles. "I know." "Bellingham isn't answering the phone." "I know, Ren." Her voice cracked. "But she's the only family we have left. And if we sit in this basement, we're just waiting." She was right. That was the worst part. She was right. I stood up in the dark and I said, "Okay, but we do it my way." My way meant daylight. My way meant supplies. My way meant not opening the front door until I understood what was on the other side of it. We waited until the basement window showed gray. Mara slept, or pretended to, curled against the wall with her hood pulled up. I sat on the third step from the bottom with a claw hammer across my knees, which was the closest thing to a weapon I owned. And I made a list in my head. Water, canned food, the good knife from the block, not the paring knife, the car keys, cash from the coffee tin above the fridge, the road atlas in the hall closet. I still had one. My mother had been that kind of woman, and now so was I. When the light in the window was strong enough to see by, I unlocked the basement door and went up alone. Mara didn't argue. She'd stopped arguing. That was another thing that was new. The house looked exactly the same. That was the strangest part. The coffee cups were still on the table where we'd left them. The curtain was still parted where Mara had pulled it back. The front door was still locked and chained. Nothing had changed, except that on the inside of the front door, at about chest height, there were 4 long scratches in the paint. Not deep, not from a tool, from fingernails. I did not tell Mara about the scratches. I moved through the house fast and quiet. I filled 2 backpacks, hers and mine, from college, still in the hall closet with a stale smell of textbooks in them. Water bottles, as many as would fit. A can opener. Cans of soup, beans, tuna, peaches. A flashlight from the junk drawer, and after a moment of thought, a second one. Batteries, the knife, the hammer, the road atlas, a wool blanket, my mother's carriage clock, because I couldn't leave it, which was stupid, and I knew it was stupid, and I packed it anyway. I went to the front window last. I stood well back from it, the way you stand back from the edge of a cliff, and I looked out at Maple Street. There were 3 of them. One was in the middle of the road, 30 yards down toward Ellis. One was on Mr. Halverson's lawn, standing at an angle, as if it had been walking and had simply stopped mid-stride and forgotten to complete the step. The third was closer, much closer, sitting on the curb directly across from our house. Its back to me, its head tilted so far to one side it was nearly touching its shoulder. I watched them for a full minute. None of them moved. None of them appeared to breathe, though I couldn't tell for sure from that distance. The one on the curb had gray hair. I didn't recognize the back of the head. And I'd lived on Maple for 11 years. Mr. Halverson's front door was open. Not ajar, open all the way. His bathrobe was on the porch in a heap, as if he'd stepped out of it. I went back down to the basement. "We can't take the car," I told Mara. She looked up. "Why?" "Because there are 3 of them on the street already, and I don't know how many more between here and the highway, and a car sounds like something." "Then how?" "Bikes. Ours are in the garage. We stay quiet. We take the back way through the green belt. We come out on Warren Road past the elementary school. From Warren, we can figure out the rest." "Bikes." She said it like she was tasting the word. "Ren, you haven't been on a bike since you were 19. Neither have you. I ride at the gym. Not the same. I know it's not the same. I'm just..." She stopped. She rubbed her face with both hands. When she took them away, her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. "Okay, bikes, back way, Warren Road. Then what?" "Then we get out of Ashfield." "And then?" "Then we figure it out." It was, I think, the worst plan I had ever made in my life. It was also the only plan I had. Mara nodded once, the small, tight nod she gave our father whenever he asked her something she didn't want to answer. And she shouldered her pack and she followed me up the stairs. At the back door, I stopped her. I put my hand on the doorknob and I didn't turn it. "Whatever you see out there," I said, "don't scream. Don't run unless I run. Don't stop unless I stop. And if I tell you to leave me, you leave me. Wren, you leave me." She didn't agree. She didn't disagree. She just held my eyes until I turned the knob. The backyard was empty. The morning was overcast and very still, the kind of gray that has no weather in it, just waiting. The grass needed cutting. The tomato plants Mara had planted in May were leaning against their stakes, heavy with fruit that was never going to be picked. The garage was detached, 10 yards across the lawn. We crossed it fast, one at a time, Mara first, me watching the gate at the side of the house. Nothing came through the gate. I got to the garage and slid the side door open just enough for us to squeeze through. The bikes were where they had been for years. Mine hung on a hook. Hers leaned against the wall behind the lawnmower. Both tires on mine were flat. Both tires on hers held air. "I hadn't been on it since I was 19, she'd said. She'd been right. "Take yours," I whispered. "I'll figure something out." "Wren, go. Wait by the back gate. I'll be 1 minute." She wheeled her bike toward the door. I found the pump. My hands were shaking, which surprised me. I hadn't noticed them shaking before. And now I couldn't make them stop. I pumped the front tire until it was hard, then the back. Every squeak of the pump sounded like a shout in a church. I kept expecting the side door to darken with a shape. It didn't. I wheeled the bike out. Mara was at the back gate, one hand on the latch, staring through the gap in the fence toward the green belt. "There's one," she whispered. I looked. 20 yards into the trees, half hidden by a trunk, something was standing. It was facing away from us. It was very tall, or it was standing on something. I couldn't tell. "It hasn't seen us," she said. "It might not see. It might hear." "Then what do we do?" I thought. The greenbelt ran a 1/4 mile through the neighborhood and came out at the back of the elementary school. If we walked the bikes, we could stay off the pavement of the path, on the softer dirt beside it. If we rode, we'd be quieter than running, but faster than we could react. If we went the other way, out the front, we had 3 of them to pass on Maple. "We walk," I said, "until we're past it. Then we ride." She nodded. We eased the gate open. It squeaked. Not loudly. Enough. The thing in the trees did not turn. We walked our bikes along the dirt shoulder of the path, one behind the other, Mara in front because I wanted my eyes on her back. The green belt smelled like pine sap and something else, something under the pine sap, sweet and wrong. The way meat smells on a hot day when you've left the trash out too long. I tried not to think about what that meant. We were 15 yards past the standing thing when a branch cracked behind us. I didn't look back. Neither did Mara. We kept walking at the same pace, not faster. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every muscle in my body wanted to run, and every nerve in my brain was screaming that running was the exact wrong answer. And somewhere between those two things was the pace of a woman walking a bike down a dirt path on a gray morning. And I held to it because it was the only thing I could hold to. The branch cracked again, closer. Mara's shoulders were shaking. I could see it through her hoodie. 20 more steps, I whispered. Then we ride. She nodded without turning. We counted. I counted out loud, very softly, and she counted with me. At 20, we mounted. At 21, we pushed off. At 22, whatever was behind us started running. I have never heard a human being run like that. Not before, not since. It was too fast and too even, no rhythm of breath in it, no give in the footfalls. It was the sound of something that did not need to pace itself because it did not intend to stop. We pedaled. Mara's chain caught, sang, caught again. Mine held. The path curved, the trees thinned. The chain link at the back of the elementary school came up ahead of us, gray and welcome as a wall in a storm. And I told Mara to go left at the fence, and she went left, and I went left after her. And behind us, the running stopped as suddenly as it had started. Neither of us looked back. We rode. Warren Road ran straight for 2 miles, past the elementary school, past the little strip mall with the laundromat and the pizza place, past the turnoff to the community center, and then out toward the county highway. We didn't make it to the highway. We made it to the strip mall. The pizza place was on fire. Not blazing, smoldering, the way a fire looks when it's been burning a long time and has run out of easy things to eat. Black smoke sat above the roof in a thick, low cloud that didn't seem to want to rise. The laundromat next door was untouched. Its front window was intact. Behind the glass, the dryers were still spinning. That was the thing that stopped me. The dryers were still spinning. The power was on. Somewhere, someone had put clothes in a dryer, and then something had happened and the dryers had just kept going, patient and stupid, tumbling somebody's laundry into the end of the world. Wren. Mara had stopped a few feet ahead. She was looking at the parking lot. There were cars in the parking lot. 4 of them. All of them had their doors open. One had its driver's side window smashed inward. In the space between 2 of them, on the asphalt, there was a smear. That's the only word I have for it. A long, dark smear that led from the driver's door of one car to the front bumper of another and then stopped. There was no body. That was somehow worse than a body. "We keep going," I said. "Wren, we keep going. There's someone in the laundromat." I looked. She was right. Through the front window, past the row of dryers, a woman was standing at the counter. She was middle-aged, in a green shirt, with her hair up in the kind of loose bun women put up when we're planning to be somewhere for a while. She wasn't moving. She wasn't looking at us. She was staring at the wall behind the counter where the change machine was, and she was not moving. "She's alive," Mara whispered. "We don't know that. She's standing. So were the ones on our street." Mara looked at me, really looked at me. I could see the argument she wanted to make forming in her mouth and then dissolving as she understood, actually understood for the first time, what I was telling her. That standing did not mean alive. That upright did not mean human. That we were going to have to look at every person we saw from now on with the assumption that they were not. And we were going to have to be right about that before we found out we were wrong. She swallowed. She nodded. Then the woman in the green shirt turned her head. Not fast. Not the dull turn of the man on the corner. Slow. Human slow. She looked at us through the glass, and her mouth opened, and she said something we couldn't hear her. But I could read the shape of it on her lips. Help. Mara was off her bike before I could stop her. "Mara. She's alive." "Mara, wait." But she was already at the door, pulling on the handle, and the door was locked. And the woman inside was walking toward it now, with both hands out. And I could see the woman's face clearly now. And there was blood on her collar, and blood on the back of one hand. And her eyes were the eyes of a person, a whole and terrified person. And she was saying, "Help, help, please," through the glass. Mara looked at me over her shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her whole face was one question, and the question was, What kind of person are you going to be, Ren, in the world that just started? I got off my bike. I walked to the door. The woman inside was crying now, silent behind the glass, one hand flat against it. Her palm left a print. Her palm was shaking. "Unlock it," I said, loud enough for her to hear through the door. She did. Her hands fumbled. She got it on the second try. She pulled the door open, and she fell forward into Mara's arms like a woman who had been holding herself upright by sheer willpower for hours. And Mara caught her, and the woman said over and over, "There's a girl. There's a girl. There's a girl in the back." I looked past them into the laundromat. At the back, behind the last row of machines, a child was sitting on the floor with her knees pulled up to her chest. She couldn't have been more than 8. She was holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear. She was watching us with the flat, tired eyes of someone who had already learned that morning that the world did not save children just because they were children. The woman in Mara's arms said her name was Denise. The girl's name, she said, was Ivy. Ivy was not her daughter. Ivy's mother was in the back office of the pizza place next door. Ivy's mother had been in the back office of the pizza place next door since a little after 6 that morning, and she had not come out. I looked at Mara. Mara looked at me, and I understood that we had just become 4. Denise sat on the floor of the laundromat, with her back to a dryer, and drank half a bottle of water in one long swallow. Ivy would not let go of Mara's sleeve. Mara didn't ask her to. "I was picking up my uniforms," Denise said. Her voice was hoarse in a way that suggested she'd been screaming earlier and had stopped, not because she wanted to, but because her throat had given out. "I work at the hospital, Ashfield General. I do laundry pickup for the surgical unit on my way in. They lost a machine last month. They've been sending stuff out." She stopped. She realized none of that mattered anymore. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye. "Denise." I knelt down in front of her. "What happened at the hospital?" She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "I never made it." "You never made it." "I got here at 5:40. The dryers were running. Nobody was here. I thought I don't know what I thought. I figured someone had stepped out. I put my load in. I sat down." She laughed, a short, cracked sound. "I sat down, and I fell asleep. In a plastic chair. That's how tired I've been. That's how." She stopped again. She looked at Ivy. Ivy was watching her with the stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. "The scream woke me up," Denise said quieter. 6:40-something, from next door. I ran over. The front door of the pizza place was locked, but the side door, the one they use for deliveries, that was open. I went in. There was a woman on the floor, Ivy's mother. She glanced at Ivy again. She chose her next word carefully. "She was hurt," she said. "Badly. She told me Ivy was in the walk-in cooler. She'd put her in there when she heard something in the front. She made me promise to get Ivy out. So I got Ivy out. We came back here because it was the closest place with a lock. And then a man came to the front window. He wasn't right. He tried to get in. He gave up after a while. And then more of them came. And then they went away. And then you came." She was quiet. Ivy said nothing. "Denise," I said. "The woman in the pizza place. Ivy's mother. Where is she now?" Denise looked at me, and I could see the answer in her face before she said it. "She's still in there. I couldn't move her. And she told me not to." "Told you not to?" "She said she was going to change. She said she could feel it. She said whatever it is, it goes fast. She said, don't let Ivy see." Denise's voice broke. She was a stranger to me. I don't know her. I don't know her name. And I promised her I'd... You did the right thing, Mara said. I don't know what the right thing is anymore. Nobody did. We sat with that for a minute. Ivy shifted her weight against Mara's leg and didn't look up. I stood up. My knees hurt from kneeling on tile. I went to the front of the laundromat and looked out at Warren Road. Warren Road was not empty anymore. Down at the far end, near the turnoff to the community center, 4 figures were walking in the middle of the street. They were walking together, in a loose group, at the same slow pace, and even at that distance I could tell that they were not walking the way people walk. They were walking the way a school of fish moves, turning together, drifting together, without any apparent leader. Behind them, farther down, there were more. 6, 8. I stopped counting. Mara, I said quietly, come here. She came. She looked. Her mouth tightened. Ren. I know. Ren, we can't take them out that way. I know. Ren. I know, Mara. We stood there. The dryers hummed behind us. Ivy said in a very small voice, Are we going to die? Denise made a sound I don't want to describe. Mara turned. She crouched down in front of Ivy, and she took the little girl's face in both her hands, gently, and she said, No, we're not. We're going to get out of this town, all 4 of us, together. Do you believe me? Ivy looked at her for a long time. Then she nodded, once. Mara stood up. She looked at me. Back way, she said. Back way, I agreed. Where does the back of this strip mall go? Alley, loading dock, fence. Then it's the field behind the middle school, and after that it's Route 12. Route 12 goes north. Route 12 goes anywhere but here. She nodded. She held out her hand to Ivy. Ivy took it. Denise stood up slowly, like her body hurt. I'll slow you down, she said. My knee. From an old surgery. I can walk, but I can't. Then we walk, I said. All of us. Slow, together. Nobody gets left. Denise looked at me and her eyes filled. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We went out the back door of the laundromat into an alley that smelled like grease and old rain, and we started walking north. The field behind the middle school was the size of 2 football fields laid end to end, and it was empty, and it was beautiful in a way I had never noticed before. Long grass, uncut since June. A goalpost at one end that had rusted to the color of dried blood. A backstop for softball at the other end. And beyond it, a low chain-link fence and then the shoulder of Route 12. We crossed the field in a diagonal line, keeping to the tall grass at the edge, staying off the mowed path down the middle. Denise walked with a limp she was trying to hide. Ivy walked between Mara and me, silent, still holding the rabbit. Nobody talked. There was a specific kind of quiet you learn in a place like that. And it isn't the quiet of not making noise. It's the quiet of not having anything left to say. We were halfway across when Ivy stopped walking. Mister, she said. I looked down at her. It took me a second to understand she was talking to me. Mister, she said again, there's a dog. I looked where she was looking. Out past the softball backstop, at the fence line, something was moving. Low, 4-legged, coming toward us at an angle. For one full second I thought, she's right. It's a dog, thank God. A dog would be. Then it came out of the tall grass and I saw it, and it wasn't a dog. I don't know what it was. I have thought about it a lot in the time since, and I still don't know. It had been a dog once. It was the size and shape of a large retriever. But its head was wrong. The jaw hung loose. The eyes had the same milky flatness I'd seen in the man on the corner. And it moved with the same wrong, hitching over speed as the thing that had chased us in the green belt. It saw us. It came. "Run," I said. We ran. Denise couldn't run, not really, so I got under one of her arms, and Mara got under the other, and we half-carried her. And Ivy ran ahead of us with the rabbit clutched to her chest. And the thing that had been a dog covered the ground behind us, faster than anything with 4 legs had any right to move. Mara was faster than me. Denise was heavier than I expected. The fence was farther than it looked. "Ivy!" I shouted. "Ivy, the fence! Climb it, now!" Ivy hit the fence and went up it like she'd been climbing fences her whole life. She was over the top in 3 seconds. She dropped down on the other side and turned and looked back at us with her mouth open in a small round O of terror. 20 yards. "Denise, I need you to run." "I can't." "You can. 10 more seconds. Run." She ran. God knows what it cost her knee. She ran. We got to the fence and Mara went over first and turned and reached down, and I lifted Denise as high as I could. And Denise grabbed Mara's hand and half climbed, half was hauled over the top, and she fell down the other side, and I heard her cry out when she landed, and I did not have time to look. The thing that had been a dog was 5 yards away. I went up the fence. I felt it hit the fence a foot below me. I felt the chain link shudder. I felt something scrape my calf, a claw, a tooth, I don't know. And I got my leg over the top, and I dropped down on the other side and rolled and came up on my knees on the gravel shoulder of Route 12. The thing on the other side of the fence hit the fence again, and again, and again. The chain link held. The thing did not seem to understand fences. It kept coming forward as if it expected the fence to eventually not be there. I looked down at my calf. The scrape was bleeding. It was not deep. It was a scrape. Mara was staring at it. "It's a scrape," I said. "Wren, it didn't bite me. It scraped me on the fence." "Wren, are you sure?" "It's a scrape, Mara." She looked at my face for a long time. Then she nodded once, and she looked away. And she did not look at my calf again for the rest of that day. Denise was sitting on the shoulder with her knee bent at a wrong angle. Ivy was kneeling beside her. Denise's face was white. "I twisted it," she said. Coming down, I twisted it. "Can you stand?" "Give me a minute." I gave her a minute. I stood at the fence and watched the thing on the other side. It watched me back. Its milky eyes did not blink. After a while, it turned and drifted back into the tall grass. And it was gone. And I understood that the world I had lived in until 11:47 the night before had contained a lot of assumptions I was not going to get to keep. "Denise," I turned around. "We need to move." "I know." "Can you walk?" She stood up. She almost fell. She put her weight on the knee and hissed and put it on the other one instead. "I can walk," she said. "I'll be slow." "Then we'll be slow." Mara helped her up. Ivy took her hand on the other side. And the 4 of us started up Route 12, north, toward whatever was left of the world. Route 12 was empty for the first mile. Then it wasn't. We came around a bend, and there was a pickup truck in the middle of the road, angled across both lanes, its front end wrapped around a telephone pole. The driver's door was open. Nobody was in the cab. Nobody was on the road. Mara stopped. "We check it?" "For what?" "Keys, supplies, anything." I did not want to check it. Every instinct I had said, keep walking. But Denise's knee was worse with every step, and the sky was the kind of gray that meant rain by evening. And We had 4 people and 2 backpacks and 1 blanket. And if there were keys in the truck, and if the truck could still move despite the front end, then everything changed. "I'll check it," I said. "You 3 keep walking. Slow. I'll catch up." Mara did not like it. She did not argue. She took Ivy's hand and put her other arm under Denise's, and they kept walking. I went to the truck. The keys were not in the ignition. There was a backpack on the passenger seat. There was a rifle case behind the seat. There was a smear of blood on the steering wheel that was not fresh. I took the backpack. I took the rifle case. I did not open the rifle case. I did not have time. I caught up to them a quarter-mile later. Mara looked at what I was carrying, and her eyes widened. "Is it? I don't know. I haven't opened it." "Ren, if there's a gun..." "I know." "Do you know how to..." "No." "Neither do I." "Denise?" Denise, walking 3-legged with Mara's arm around her, shook her head. "My husband did. He passed 4 years ago. I never wanted to touch them. They're all still in a safe at the house. I never even learned the combination." "Great," I said. "So we have a rifle case that none of us can operate." "We'll figure it out," Mara said. "Later, when we stop." We walked. The sky got grayer. Ivy started limping too, though she wouldn't say why. And I picked her up eventually and carried her. And she weighed almost nothing. And she put her arms around my neck and pressed her face against my shoulder. And did not speak for 2 miles. Around what must have been noon, we came to a farmhouse set back from the road. White clapboard, red barn, long dirt driveway, a mailbox at the road that read Boyd, a pickup in the driveway that was intact, a porch with 2 rocking chairs on it, both empty, both still rocking very slightly, as if someone had just gotten up. I stopped at the mailbox. So did Mara. "Ren," she said quietly, "we need to stop." "I know." "Denise can't keep going. I can't keep carrying her. Ivy's asleep on your shoulder, and it's going to rain." "I know." "So we knock, and if someone's home, we ask for help. And if no one's home, we take what we need." She looked at me. "Is that who we are now?" "I don't know yet." We walked up the driveway. The gravel crunched under our feet. Nothing moved in any of the windows. The barn door was closed. The rocking chairs kept rocking, very slightly, in a breeze I couldn't feel. I set Ivy down on the porch steps. She stirred but didn't wake. Mara helped Denise sit beside her. I knocked on the door. Nothing. I knocked again. Something moved inside. Not footsteps. Slower than footsteps. A dragging, considered sound. The sound of a body that was choosing its route across a room. I stepped back off the porch. Mara stood up. She reached down and put her hand on Ivy's shoulder without waking her. The door opened. The man in the doorway was maybe 60. He was holding a shotgun. He was pointing it at my chest. His eyes were clear and human and very, very tired. "You're not one of them," he said. "No, sir, we're not." "How do I know?" "Because we knocked." He looked at me. He looked at Mara. He looked at Denise on the porch step, at Ivy asleep against her shoulder. He looked at my calf, at the scrape, at the dried blood. "That from one of them?" he said. "From a fence, getting away from one of them." "You sure?" "I'm sure." He was quiet for a long time. The shotgun did not move. Then he said, "My wife's inside. She's not well. She's not one of them either, not yet. But she's not well. You understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes, sir." "Name's Boyd, Frank Boyd. This is my farm." "Ren, This is my sister Mara. On the porch is Denise. The girl's name is Ivy. Denise found her this morning. Ivy's mother didn't make it. He looked at Ivy. Something in his face shifted, the way a stone shifts when water gets underneath it. He lowered the shotgun. "Come inside," Frank Boyd said. "You can't stay out here, not with what's coming." The kitchen of the Boyd farmhouse smelled like coffee and old wood, and underneath both, something medicinal, the sharp, clean smell of rubbing alcohol. Frank's wife was upstairs. He didn't take us to her, and we didn't ask. He set us up in the kitchen instead, pulled out 4 mismatched chairs, put a kettle on a wood stove I hadn't noticed before because it was tucked into what used to be a fireplace. He moved through his own house like a man who had already lost most of it and was making sure not to lose the rest by being careless. "Solar," he said, catching me looking at the light bulb over the table. Panels on the barn roof, battery bank in the cellar. Been off-grid since '09. Whatever this is didn't take that down. "You knew something like this could happen?" "I knew grids fail. Didn't know about..." He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the road, toward the dog in the field, toward all of it. I didn't know about that. Mara was cleaning my calf at the sink. She was doing it with a focus that wasn't really about the wound. The wound was fine. The wound was already scabbing. She just needed something to do with her hands. "You said something's coming," I said. Frank sat down. He set the shotgun across his knees, not pointed at anyone, just there. "Radio," he said. "Ham. I keep one in the cellar. It's been quiet most of the morning. But an hour before you came up my drive, I picked up a broadcast out of Yakima. Emergency management. They were routing people to a checkpoint at the Vantage Bridge on I-90. Told everyone in the corridor to head there before dark. Before dark. They didn't say why, but they said it twice." Mara's hand stopped moving at the sink. "Frank," I said, "how far is Vantage?" 60 miles by road, 45 if you cut across the county, not by foot, not with a girl and a woman with a bad knee. You have a truck in the driveway." He looked at me. "I do." "Frank, I know what you're going to ask." "Frank, I know what you're going to ask, son." He held up one hand. Not angry, just tired. "I've been asking it myself for 6 hours. Whether I stay with Marjorie until the end, or whether I put her in the back of that truck and try to make Vantage before she changes. Because if I stay, she goes when she goes, and I go a little while after her. And that's the end of the Boyds. And if I go, I might make it, and I might get her medical help that doesn't exist, and I might arrive with a woman who isn't my wife anymore in the bed of my truck, and I might have to do something at that checkpoint that I don't want to do." He looked at the table. He didn't look at any of us. "So no, I haven't decided yet." Nobody said anything. Then Denise, from the chair by the stove, said, "Frank, may I see her?" He looked up. "I'm a nurse," Denise said. "Surgical, 15 years. I know I don't look like much right now, but I know what a person looks like when they're leaving, and I know what a person looks like when they're becoming something else. If you want, I can tell you which one Marjorie is." Frank Boyd was quiet for a long time. His eyes were wet. He did not let the tears fall. "Upstairs," he said. "Second door on the left. Don't get too close to her. She hasn't been herself since about 8 this morning." Denise stood up. Her knee buckled. Mara caught her elbow. Denise steadied herself, nodded, and walked out of the kitchen and up the stairs, one slow step at a time. Frank looked at me across the table. "Your sister trusts you," he said. "I know." "That little girl trusts your sister." "I know." You're the one making the calls. I know. How old are you, son? 30. He nodded slowly. I was 30 when Marjorie and I bought this place. We had nothing. We had a mortgage the bank shouldn't have given us, and a barn that leaked, and a well that ran dry every August. And we made it work because there wasn't any other choice. You understand what I'm telling you? I think so. There isn't any other choice, Ren. Not anymore. So whatever calls you're making, make them. Don't wait for the world to tell you it's okay. It's not going to. Upstairs, a door opened. Then it closed. Then, for a long time, nothing. Denise came back down the stairs slowly. She sat down in her chair by the stove without speaking. She looked at Frank. Frank looked at her. She's leaving, Denise said quietly. Not becoming, leaving. Frank closed his eyes. How long? He said. Not long. Hours, maybe less. Her pulse is thready. She's not responsive to sound. She hasn't turned, Frank. She's dying. The way people die. Her body's shutting down. She has some kind of fever. I don't know what. But it's not what the others have. I don't think she'll come back. You don't think? I can't promise you. I'm sorry. I can't promise you. Frank nodded. He put his hand over his mouth. He didn't cry. He didn't move for a long time. Then he said, I want you all to take the truck. Mara said, Frank, listen to me. He lowered his hand. His voice was even. Listen, you take the truck. You take the girl. You take Denise. You go to Vantage. You get her. He gestured at Ivy, asleep against Denise's side. You get her somewhere with other children. That's what she needs. She needs to see other children who are still here. Do you understand me? Yes, Mara said. You take the shotgun. You take the shells in the drawer by the door. You take the rifle from the cabinet in the hall. It's a .30-06. It kicks like a mule. But you point it and pull, and it does what it's supposed to. You take the fuel cans from the barn. You take the water jugs from the pantry. You take everything you need. Frank, I said, come with us. He shook his head. Frank, no, son. I'm not leaving her. Not for Vantage, not for anywhere. She's dying. I know she is. That's exactly why I'm not leaving. Nobody said anything. There was nothing to say. Frank Boyd had made his call, and he had made it a long time before we walked up his driveway. And nothing any of us said in that kitchen was going to change it. Mara stood up. She walked around the table. She put her arms around Frank's shoulders from behind, briefly, the way you hug a man you have known for 30 seconds and will remember for the rest of your life. He patted her hand once. She let go. We'll take good care of the truck, she said. Don't take care of the truck, Frank said. Take care of the girl. We loaded the truck as the sky started to spit rain. Frank showed me how to work the shotgun and pump, safety, chamber, aim. He showed me how to work the rifle. He put the boxes of shells in a canvas bag and set the bag on the passenger floor. He filled 2 5-gallon cans with gas from the tank behind the barn. He handed Mara the keys. Route 12 north to the state road, he said. State road east to the county highway. County highway south to the interstate. Interstate east to Vantage. There's a map in the glove box. It's older than you are. It'll still get you there. Thank you, Frank. Don't thank me. Just get there. Ivy was awake by then. She stood in the driveway holding her rabbit, looking up at Frank the way small children look up at very tall men. Frank knelt down in front of her. You're a brave girl, he said. Ivy didn't say anything. You know what braveness is? She shook her head. Braveness is being scared and going anyway. Can you do that? She thought about it. Then she nodded. Good, Frank said. That's good. That's what your mama would want. Ivy's face did something small and terrible. Frank pretended not to see. He stood up. His knee popped audibly. He looked at me over the top of her head. Go, he said. We got in the truck. Mara drove. Denise sat in the middle. Ivy sat on my lap in the passenger seat because there wasn't a car seat and she wouldn't let go of my neck. I held her with one arm and the shotgun with the other, and I looked out the window as Mara turned us around in the driveway and pulled out onto Route 12. Frank was still standing on the porch when we lost sight of him. He was not waving. He had gone back inside before we reached the road, I think. But in my memory, he is always still standing on that porch, in the light rain, one hand on the porch rail, watching us go. I don't know when Marjorie died. I don't know if she turned. I don't know if he had to do the thing he was afraid he would have to do. I have chosen, in the years since, to believe she went quietly, and that he sat with her until she did, and that afterward he sat with her some more. The rain came harder on the state road. Mara drove with both hands on the wheel and her jaw set. Denise dozed against my shoulder. Ivy watched the wipers. We saw things on that drive I am not going to describe in full. A minivan on its side in a ditch, doors open, nothing living or unliving in or near it. A woman walking barefoot in the rain down the shoulder of the road, going the opposite direction, who did not look at us as we passed. A dog, an actual dog, a real dog, thin and wet and scared, that ran across the road in front of us and made it. A cluster of 6 of them standing in the parking lot of a shuttered gas station, all facing the same direction, all watching the sky, which I couldn't explain and can't explain now. Mara did not stop for any of it. Not the minivan, not the woman, not the gas station. She drove. Around 4 in the afternoon, by the position of the sun behind the clouds, we hit our first roadblock. It wasn't military. It was 3 cars pulled sideways across the road, and a group of maybe 8 people standing behind them, and rifles pointed at us before Mara had even braked. Mara braked, slowly, hands visible on the wheel. Don't get out, I said. I wasn't planning to. A man walked up to the driver's side window. He was maybe 50. He had a hunting rifle. He had a red bandana tied around his upper arm. Behind him, other people had matching red bandanas. Mara rolled the window down 2 inches. Where are you headed? The man said. Vantage. Why Vantage? Ham radio broadcast out of Yakima. Emergency management checkpoint. He nodded slowly. Broadcast stopped an hour ago. Mara's hands tightened on the wheel. Stopped. Went off the air. Might be back. Might not. We don't know. Is the checkpoint still there? Don't know that either. Nobody's come back the other way. Then we go find out. The man looked past her at the rest of us. His eyes stopped on Ivy. You got a little girl in there. I do. You got fuel? Enough. You got water? Enough. You got weapons? Enough. He studied Mara for a long moment. Then he stepped back and waved a hand at the men behind the cars, and 2 of them moved the middle car back so we could pass. Road's clear to the interstate, he said. After that, we don't know. Good luck. Thank you. Don't come back this way, he said. We'll be here till dark. After dark, we won't be. And after dark, this road belongs to them. Mara nodded. She rolled up the window. She drove through the gap. Behind us, in the rear view, the men pushed the car back into place. Ren, Mara said quietly, once we were past. Yeah, if the checkpoint isn't there, I know. If it's just Vantage and nothing else, I know. What do we do? I looked out the window. The rain was easing. The sky ahead to the east was showing a thin band of clear at the horizon. The road was empty for as far as I could see. We keep going, I said. We keep going until we find someone in charge or until we run out of road, whichever comes first. And if it's the road that comes first, we find high ground and we make a plan, and we don't stop moving ever until we know what we're doing. Denise stirred against my shoulder. That's not a plan, she murmured, half asleep. That's a compass. A compass is more than we had this morning. She didn't answer. She was already asleep again. Ivy leaned her head back against my chest. She said without turning around, "Mr. Wren." "Yes, sweetheart." "Is Frank going to be okay?" I looked at Mara. Mara looked at the road. Neither of us said anything for a while. "Frank's going to be okay," I said finally. "Frank's exactly where he wanted to be." Ivy accepted that. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. We drove on toward the interstate as the rain thinned and the light went long and gold across the wet asphalt. And I understood for the first time, watching that light, that we were probably going to live. Not all of us, not forever, but long enough to matter, long enough to owe the world something we couldn't yet name. The interstate at Vantage crosses the Columbia River on a long steel bridge. On a clear day, you can see the water from 10 miles out, the way a coin catches light at the bottom of a well. We came over the last rise just as the sun was going down, and the river was on fire, orange, red, gold, and there were headlights on the bridge. Dozens of them, slow moving, a line. The checkpoint was real. Mara made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. Denise woke up and looked and put her hand over her mouth. Ivy sat up on my lap and pressed her palm flat against the window. "There's people," Ivy said, quiet, like she was afraid saying it too loud would make it stop being true. "Yeah, honey, there's people." We joined the line a mile out. It moved slowly. Every so often we'd creep forward another car length. There were National Guard trucks pulled onto the shoulders. There were floodlights being set up on stanchions. There were men and women in uniform walking up and down the line with clipboards, asking questions, checking hands, checking eyes, checking bites. A young woman in fatigues came to Mara's window. She looked exhausted. She looked about 22. She looked like she had been doing this for 100 years. "How many in the vehicle?" "4. 2 adults, 1 adult with a leg injury, 1 child." "Any bites? Any scratches from an infected?" Mara hesitated. Her eyes flicked to me. "I have a scrape on my calf," I said. "From a chain-link fence, getting away from an infected. It didn't touch me." The young woman looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Sir, I'm going to need to see the scrape." I rolled up my pant leg. She shone a small flashlight on it. The scrape was scabbed over. It was clearly a scrape. She looked at it for what felt like a long time. Then she looked at my face. "Where are you all coming from?" "Ashfield." "Ashfield?" She lowered the flashlight. "You came from Ashfield by road?" "Yes." "When did you leave?" "This morning." She stared at me. She said softly, "Ashfield went dark at 0200. We haven't had a single vehicle out of that corridor since. We took Route 12 to the state road." "You took—" She stopped. She turned her head and said something into a radio clipped to her shoulder. She listened. She looked back at me. Her whole face had changed. "Sir, ma'am, I need you all to pull off to the right, past the second guard truck, and wait for someone from Intel to come talk to you. Do not leave the vehicle. Do you understand? Are we in trouble? No, sir. You are the opposite of trouble. You may be the most useful people who have come through this checkpoint today. Mara pulled off. We waited. A different soldier came, older, a captain, and he asked us questions for an hour. What we had seen, where we had seen it, what roads had been passable, what the infected did in daylight versus at night, whether we had seen the fast ones, whether we had seen the animal ones, what we knew about Ashfield, what we knew about the pizza place, the laundromat, the middle school field, the Boyd farm. I told him about Frank. I told him about Marjorie. I told him the road number and the mile marker and the name on the mailbox. He wrote it all down. He said someone would try to get out there. He didn't say when. He didn't promise anything. That was the first thing about him I trusted. When he was done, they gave us water and MREs and blankets, and they moved us across the bridge to a staging area on the other side, in a fairground parking lot lit by generator floodlights, where there were maybe 200 other people, and cots, and a medical tent, and a table where a woman with a clipboard was writing down names. Ivy would not let go of my hand. Mara stood next to me. She looked at the crowd. She looked at the tents. She looked at Denise, who was already being helped toward the medical tent by a volunteer. She looked at me. We made it, she said, like she needed to hear it out loud. We made it. Ren, yeah. There are more coming, right behind us. There have to be. I looked at her. I did not lie to her. I don't know, I said. I hope so. Yeah, she said quietly. Me too. We stayed at the fairground for 11 days. They processed people slowly. They had to. Every arrival had to be screened, questioned, watched. Some people who came in on the second and third day did not stay long. I watched a man on the fourth day walk into the medical tent talking. And I watched them carry a sheet-covered stretcher out of it 4 hours later, and nobody said anything, and everybody understood. Ivy slept between Mara and me on adjacent cots for the first 3 nights. On the 4th night, a woman named Karen from the Red Cross found us and said there was a group of families with children who had lost parents, and would we be willing to bring Ivy to meet them? And Ivy went. And she came back that evening, quieter but different. The specific quiet of a child who has seen other children and understood for the first time in a day and a half that she was not the only one. Denise's knee needed surgery she wasn't going to get for a while. She stayed in the medical tent. She was working there by the 2nd day anyway, limp and all. She said it was better than lying down. She said lying down was where the thinking happened. On day 7, someone at Intel came and found me and Mara. It was the captain from the bridge. He looked older than he had 11 days ago. Boyd farm, he said without preamble. Mara went very still. We got a team out there yesterday. The house was empty, both of them. Peaceful. He'd taken care of things. He left a note on the kitchen table. I don't know what was in it. It was addressed to you. He held out an envelope. It said Ren and Mara on the front in shaky pencil. I took it. I did not open it in front of him. I did not open it in front of Mara. I put it in my pocket. Thank you, Captain. He asked us to tell you something else in the note. I read that part. He said tell them the girl matters more than any of us. He said tell them to remember that. I'll remember. Good luck to you both. He walked away. Mara did not say anything. She put her hand in mine and held it. I have thought many times about what I would have said in that moment if I'd been a different kind of brother. And I have never come up with anything better than what I said, which was nothing. That night, after Ivy was asleep, I went to the edge of the fairground where the floodlights didn't quite reach, and I opened the envelope. Frank's handwriting was worse than his voice. The note was very short. Wren and Mara Marjorie went at 4. Peaceful. She said my name at the end. I sat with her for a while after. I want you to know I don't regret staying. I would have regretted going. Take good care of the girl. That's the whole assignment. Everything else is optional. FB. I stood in the dark for a long time. Then I went back to my cot. They moved us on day 12. A convoy going west to a bigger camp outside Ellensburg, where they were building something more permanent. Mara and Ivy and I got seats in the 3rd truck. Denise stayed behind. Advantage the medical tent needed her more than the camp did, she said, and she'd catch up to us when her knee let her. She hugged Ivy for a long time before we left. Ivy did not cry. She had done all her crying already, in the small, careful, private amounts she had learned to do it in. You come find us, Mara told Denise. The minute you can, you come find us. I will. Promise. I promise. She kept it. That's a story for another time. We got in the truck. Ivy sat between Mara and me. The convoy pulled out of the fairground onto the interstate, and we drove west into a country that was smaller than it had been 11 days ago, and was going to be smaller still. And the sun came up on our left over the hills we had crossed to get there. I thought about Frank on his porch. I thought about the woman in the pizza place, whose name we had never learned. I thought about the man on the corner who had turned his head like a doll. I thought about Biscuit, who had died 3 years ago, and who I still missed most on the mornings like that one. Ivy was asleep with her head against Mara's arm. Mara looked at me over the top of her head. Wren, yeah, we're going to be okay. Yeah, I mean it. Not perfect, not the way we were, but okay. I looked out the window. The road was long and empty and going somewhere. Yeah, I said. I think we are. I still have the carriage clock. It has never worked again. Not the night the clock stopped, not any night since. It sits on a shelf in a small house I share with my sister and a girl who is not our daughter, but has been ours anyway for a long time now. And its second hand is still tilted forward, still reaching for something it will never touch. I keep it because it was my mother's. I keep it because it was the first thing that told me the world had changed. I keep it because it reminds me that time doesn't actually stop, only clocks do. And that the difference between those two things is the whole story of what happened to us. Ivy is older now. She reads on the porch in the evenings. She asks about her mother sometimes, in a careful, quiet way, and I answer her carefully and quietly, and Mara answers her better than I do. And between us, we tell her the truth in pieces small enough for her to hold. I don't have nightmares anymore. Mara says I don't talk in my sleep the way I did the first year. What I have instead is a kind of held breath, a small tightness at 11:47 every night, a moment when I look up from whatever I'm doing and listen. The refrigerator hums. The house settles. Ivy turns a page. Mara, in the next room, says something to no one in particular. The world is still here, not the one I had, a smaller one, a quieter one, a truer one, maybe. And every night at 11:48, I let the breath out, and I keep going.